Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Peep Into Education. I'm Kylie Elizabeth, also known as the Virtuoso Educator, and my special guest today is one of my dear friends, Jeri Perkins, who is a licensed master social worker here in Phoenix, Arizona metro area. And we're going to talk a little bit on social emotional learning, cultural responsiveness, and some advocacy within the world of education. And I'm really excited because I've known Jeri for years, and she does a lot through her own personal business called Impact Action Network. And I'm going to bring her on, and we're going to have her introduce herself, and then we're going to go into our conversation for today.
Hi.
All right. Hey there, Jeri. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. So I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself to the guest and just tell us a little bit about your educational background, and then we'll get going into our conversation.
Yeah. So I graduated in May of 2022 from Arizona State University's Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions with a Master of Social Work concentration, policy administration, and community practice. So I have a passion for advocacy. I'm a macro level social worker through and through, and I decided to strengthen my clinical skills and really lay that foundation. So I pursued my licensed master social worker, and I'm working towards my independent licensed clinical social worker, LCSW licensure. So I'm excited about that. I've done some speaking around the Valley at Attitude Mental Health Summit for African American Women on the intersectionality of or on the what was it, the I'm forgetting the intersectionality of historical and generational trauma from an
Okay.
internal family systems lens. And then the Child Abuse and Prevention Conference on the intersectionality of childhood trauma. And then the University of Phoenix Inclusive Leadership Summit on the invisible tax of scholars and students of color navigating higher education.
Nice. You are all over the place, and I love all the topics that you cover and you go over. And so I'm just curious, how did you get involved in this world of work that you're in? And if you want to share a little bit about your educational background prior to, your college education, where are you from, and what kind of influenced you to get into the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, so I'm a journalism major undergrad, and I graduated from a HBCU, Lincoln University, Missouri. Go Blue Tigers! And I interned at NBC Bay Area News for 4 summers through the Emma Bowen Foundation. And during my internship, I really was intrigued um, on how to use the media as an outlet to raise social awareness. And my news mentors would always be like, that's activism, not journalism. So I knew when I started thinking about pursuing higher education, at first I thought, I may go to law school. And then I realized I don't know if that's at the core of the work that I want to do. Like, it's, I was always doing social work,
Mhm.
and the advocacy, that passion, while going through grad school, starting the Multicultural Students Alliance, being an inclusive design for equity and access scholar, it really ignited my passion for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice work. And also
Yeah.
using my experiences as a path and a guide for other students and professionals of color navigating conflict resolution in academic and workplace settings. So I was born in Indiana. I grew up in Northern California, Silicon Valley. Um, San Jose, Cupertino, Bay Area, and then went to undergrad in Missouri at Lincoln University and grad school at ASU. So I'm here for how long? I don't know. I would love to move down south. I say I'm a Southern girl at heart,
Mhm.
and I have roots Louisiana Creole. So, those are my people.
Nice. You have so much like rich history in you. I think just from the different places that
Mm.
you're from, and just the different schools that you went to, right? And I think
Mhm.
it's very reflective of the work that you're doing. So you definitely, and ever since I've met you, you have so much passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a lot on cultural responsiveness.
Mhm.
And I just always loved and appreciated the work you did. I went to where you talked about we
The
did a
strong
book
black
workshop
woman.
together.
Yeah. So how
Yes,
racism
yes,
erode, or what is it? The strong black woman, how a myth endangers the mental and physical health of black women.
yes, yes, and that was like really great too. So those types of workshops you facilitate, and then through your LMSW, you do some counseling work too, correct? What do you do
Mhm.
in that line of work?
Yeah, so I'm a therapist, coach, advocate, consultant. So I work at a private practice, Destiny's Door Counseling Services, and I work with individuals, couples, families. Um, Again, similar work that I do, in my social work practice and community practice, root cause
Mhm.
issues, intersectionality of identity, um, racial identity, and different things, life transitions, college and career exploration. EMDR is a trauma focused therapeutic modality that I'm trained in and learning more about, as well as, narrative, solution focused, strengths based, mindfulness, and CBT,
All
all
the
of those. Yeah.
all the things. And so, those of you that are watching, please, I'm going to just throw out you can connect with Jeri at impactactionnetwork.com, both on the website as well as on Instagram and Facebook. And so, she just has a wealth of information and knowledge that I think can be applied to multiple businesses and multiple areas. So if you're needing of resources in these areas, especially in therapy, which we know is super important, but in any of the other areas that she just listed, please, be sure to review her materials and connect with her there online. So Jeri, so yeah, we're gonna get into our conversations, and me and you know each other on a personal level. So I just want to kind of tap into some of our discussions that we've been focusing around, social emotional learning and cultural responsiveness and advocacy. And mainly, I think, where should we take this from? I just want to take it from some experiences, and I think this is where it helps connect the why of what you do to those personal experiences that you've had through your educational journey, and
Mhm.
sometimes through your work experience as well. And so, I want to start with maybe the social emotional learning side of how it relates to education, and why are you so passionate in that realm, and maybe what are some experiences that you've had in that area, good or bad, around social emotional learning in your education.
Yeah, I think it's very important because I think that if a child or adolescent or adult social and emotional needs are not supported in academic and educational settings, it can create challenges and barriers um, to curriculum delivery, and the lens in which the learner, you know, sees the education system, or
Mm-hmm.
their role within their own education. And education is the pathway to liberation. Education is the most powerful tool that changes the world, but it can also be used as a weapon. And we see that nowadays by, first it was the critical race theory, and then banning certain literature and um, schools. And I think that representation matters, and it's so important for children to see themselves in the curriculum, to see their life
Yeah.
experiences, and to see educators who look like them delivering the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think we have to stop catering to the fragility of certain populations and instead value differences and appreciate people for being different.
Right. And I think that that's super important, that being different, because obviously everybody, regardless, even if we look the same, we are all different and have completely different experiences in our world. But it is important, like you said, to value the differences of people and have it be reflected in what we're learning in schools, in what we're doing, even in trainings and things like that, to be very encompassing of the multiple diversities and including everybody. So I think you hit really good on stop catering to the fragility of certain groups of people, because we're all afraid of hurting people's feelings, but at the same time, certain groups are not afraid to
Right.
damage other groups of people through
Right.
weaponizing education. You could speak on the school to prison pipeline, which we talked a lot about. You could speak on, like you said, banning books. People think it's very minor. People can think it's very very like, oh, don't take it that serious. But no, this is actually a serious issue when we're talking about excluding certain points of views from specific demographics of people, because I can see if it's happening for all, but it's not. And that's where I think that the problems are. And so, like, within your experience, kind of related, you do a lot within diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so as it relates to education, obviously we talked about the book bans and things like that, but what are some other ways that you've seen within your own experience as being a student or as an employee, or what are some other topics within diversity, equity, inclusion that you feel is just a concern or something to be focused on currently?
Yeah, so I definitely think that strengths-based perspective, seeing the lens of everything through a strengths-based perspective, and also accountability, holding the powerful accountable to uphold the values and within their mission and vision that are inclusive and equitable, and create a sense of belonging for all people who possess differences. And that's everyone. So I think in education, a lot of times I saw culture being represented as a deficit and not a
Right.
strength, just in
Right.
terms of the lack of strengths based language. And I think it's so important to change the narrative and provide that representation of people with difference in every aspect of education, from the administration to the faculty and staff to the teachers aides and the coaches and all of that, like
Right.
leadership and alumni, because it's like every student deserves the right to not only have access to quality, equitable education, but to see themselves in their institutions. And I think that it
Right.
can be very isolating when they don't see themselves in their institutions. And just touching on the school to prison pipeline, like, we're talking about the criminalization of Black and Brown children from when they are young, like as
Right.
young as preschool, even younger than that, up
Right.
until, from middle school, as they matriculate to high school, college, career, and beyond. It's like these places, it's the evolution of systemic and institutionalized racism and oppression. And until we learn strategies to conflict resolution, you know, it's going to be very challenging for people who possess difference to navigate educational and workplace settings, and to not just survive, but to thrive. And
Right.
Audre Lorde, said it best: you cannot use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. Well, I say you can use the master's tools to learn how to strategically navigate systems and institutions.
Right. Sorry, I'm taking notes. Yes. So using a tool to navigate, right? So what do you think would be one tool that we could potentially navigate to help kind of rectify some of these issues within our systems or institutions?
Well, I think there's a disinvestment in the educational experiences of communities of color and people of color, and I think that um, it's quite evident in the lack of resources allocated to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice initiatives within institutions of higher education.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to start showing that there is an investment and that we are not catering to the fragility of those in power at the expense of those who are experiencing oppression or
Right.
experiencing um, just difference that is not always celebrated because that creates division between us as a people. And
Right.
in the words on the Haitian flag, La Union fait la force. United we stand and divided we fall. So I think that if the education system worked on unity in our communities with students, with parents, with educators, and we really work together as a nucleus of a network of resources that we would see differences. We would see positive change that withstand the test of time so that history doesn't repeat itself.
Right. Right. And clearly, that this repetition of continuous problems in education is always ongoing. And so, in direct
Mhm,
relation to that topic, is, and we were touching base on this earlier, is, even the start of Florida getting rid of
mhm,
DEI funding for our higher
mhm,
education institutions. And we got the news that the University of Florida got rid of about 13 positions, and then 15
mhm,
additional faculty within
mhm,
DEI, for their college because they no longer have funding to support that. And I
mhm,
do feel that things like this, and I'll link this in our discussion for those that did not see this article. But places like Missouri is starting to look at this House bill
mhm,
to introduce this, and this is now going to trickle down to, we're starting at a very high level. When you're talking
mhm,
collegiate higher
mhm.
education, where this is like top tier, like you should be focused on these types of areas, well, in any capacity, but this is where people get to learn and get to research and really get to apply,
Right.
and have resources for the work that they're doing, which can trickle down into the content that they're even being taught into these higher education institutions. So what are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that about those types of bills being put through, and what's your thoughts on that?
I think it goes into censoring, and people are just trying to censor what's being taught. People are trying to censor and control, just
Mm-hmm.
controlling the narrative. And, again, a disinvestment because all these institutions have millions of dollars to invest in research and innovation. But you
Mm-hmm.
mean to tell me you can't invest in um, creating a spaces of belonging that are inclusive and equitable for all people, regardless of the intersectionality of their identity. So I think that it's unfortunate, and we're definitely going backwards. We're taking steps backwards because, like you said, at such a big level, even at the smallest of levels and the elementary and middle and high school, like we're cultivating young minds at these stages. Oftentimes people say you don't go to college to learn what to think, you go to college to learn how to think. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like we're trying to rob people essentially of educating their minds to liberate their bodies and their spirits because it starts with the mind and it is a
Mm-hmm.
powerful thing to waste. And I think it's ignorance. I think it's people, the powers that be, are scared because they realize that their time is running out, because people of all backgrounds are starting to wake up and call ignorance ignorance and hold people accountable. And unfortunately, those who have a history of oppressing don't really like to be held accountable. They like to just do what they do and get away with it. So when you have
Right.
people that are vocal and that make noise and that are not afraid, like have no fear of losing valuable things such as education or career to stand up for the
Mhm.
cause that they believe in, that's scary. And I think
Right.
we're seeing that within policy and advocacy, that people are their power is dwindling to the point where you have to take funding away from initiatives to make this melting pot of a country a melting pot. Like essentially you're going against the foundation of what this country was created on,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
is ignorant, you know?
Yeah. And that's so funny that you brought that, because I say that I've in my past conversations, I and it is, the melting pot term is actually a dictionary term in a lot of our history courses, and it's so interesting how they want people want to have this overall facade of, yeah, we're a melting pot and we are, all cultures are accepted and this and that, and right, but we know foundationally it's not. And like you said,
Mm-mm.
more of us are becoming aware, and it's not just one
Mm-hmm.
culture is becoming aware, it's more of us across the United States are becoming aware of what this looks like. And I always go back to ask, well, why? What purpose does it serve? And why would you remove these types of
Mm-hmm.
funding from these types of institutions? What are you so afraid of? Which we,
Threatened by, right?
without having to go down that rabbit hole, I think we kind of
Yeah.
know. But it's, at the end of the day, is like, we are considered a melting pot. There's
Mm-hmm.
multiple people of multiple races that should have
Mm-hmm.
an impact on our communities and what we're doing. And just overall, like you said, backing up to the, they want us to learn how to think and not
Mm-hmm.
know how to think. And we talked about in my past podcast about critical thinking skills is one of the top skills in 21st century learning. But you don't want them to think critically. You don't want us to think critically. You don't want us to speak on anything that we might oppose if it's not going with the general flow of
Mm-hmm.
the
The status
direction that they
quo.
want us to take, the
Mm-hmm.
status quo. Thank you. And it's just interesting. And because where I struggle to justify some of the information that is being taken out, or the direction that we're going is, do you not want a viable community? Do you not want citizens that can think for themselves and
Mm-hmm.
take action upon what is happening within their communities? And unfortunately, there's nothing wrong with having I like I say, elders, or like having older people in charge, but at the end of the day is,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be willing to adjust and be
Mm-hmm.
flexible with what the current needs are of your community, and what the current
Mm-hmm.
trends are in the world. And I think that they are trying to combat this ever expanding technology access that we have. And people, like I used to tell my students, you have the world in your hands when you are picking up a
Mm-hmm.
cell phone. You can learn
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things and you can see a lot of things. And I think this is unfortunately, because so much are voicing for wanting to be represented, for wanting to have equal equality and
Mm-hmm.
equity within schooling itself, that whoever it is that's making these high level decisions don't like it. And to me, it's just completely frustrating, because even within the article, that was referencing the University of Florida, it's like there's going to be so much backlash, so much wasted energy, because now those who did leverage on those types of resources, and which is everybody. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand, that DEI does not mean it's only Black and brown community. Like, we're talking about
Yeah.
all populations, that
Yeah.
anybody can use these resources
Right.
for different things, because so
Mm-hmm.
much is housed under DEI, including mental
Mm-hmm.
services, including like
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of supports, LGBTQ, like regardless of what community you're coming from. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like people want us to be boxed in one,
Yeah.
like a one track, like we're all the same,
Right.
but we're not all the same. And
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. So for me, this ties into like I feel, again, and I talked about this yesterday, is like, if you look back at education and its originality of why it began, and education started for math and reading skills, so those in factories could then be educated enough to work and to understand like certain concepts in the industry work, when
Mm-hmm.
we came out of the Industrial Revolution. And they needed people to be able to read, and to function and run these factories, right? And then of course
Mm-hmm.
it trickled into, you got your higher academic performers starting to be assigned to like a scientist or the manager, like all of these things, right? But when you fundamentally think about it, it is like you're prepping people to work
Yeah.
in these industries versus prepping them to even be in charge of these industries, because you have
Yeah.
so many people that are already in charge. They're like, no, we don't want you to take my place. We just want you to
Right.
work for me. And I feel like this is why we're starting to get a lot of this pushback and things being removed, because so many people are in an entrepreneurial mindset right now, on
Yeah.
top of wanting
Yeah.
better change. Because I know for
Mm-hmm.
my kids as a parent, yeah, this stuff that's not this is happening is not flying. Like, this is not
No.
okay. Um, so
And that
sorry.
goes along with the critical thinking. That's
Yeah,
the thing. And I had a colleague say something in a graduate level class. She said, well, people don't know how to critically think. And I thought to
right,
myself, like, you don't know how to critically think because you have the privilege not to critically think. I know how to critically think because
right,
I don't have the privilege not to critically think. My critical thinking depends upon my success. My critical thinking depends upon not just my thriving, but my survival in academic
right,
and workplace settings as an educated, articulate Black woman who oftentimes is seen as a threat. And that goes into the angry Black woman complex.
yeah,
And we
yep,
have everything to be angry about, but we have to
yes,
be professional and we have to align with the status quo. And it's ridiculous. And quite frankly, I think this legislation is all about the powers that be. The old guard is not willing or ready to pass the torch to the new guard. And until we have these outdated ideologies that are literally um, crippling our legacy as a
mm-hmm,
nation, we're going to continue to have the same outdated problems,
yep,
challenges, and barriers socially. So that's,
mm-hmm,
if you think about ethos, pathos, and logos, there you
yep,
go. Like
yep,
social and emotional learning is the lens in which you see the world, and even the authority in which you're able to stand in the truth on the lens of which you see the world. And that empowerment can only happen in a place where children and scholars feel like they are safe and supported in their learning environments.
right, absolutely. And and that's why I always keep questioning, like, why don't you want that? Like, and that
Mhm.
we're not going to have our answers today, but just for those that are
Mhm.
listening and that are watching, and if you don't agree with what we're saying, please put in the comment. I want to know why you don't agree, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, is we are trying to have a viable community. We want
Right.
these students to be top tier, no matter
Right.
what background that that they're in, so we can
Mhm.
have a successful civilization here in the United States. Like, you
Yeah.
can read other, and I'm, as an educator, I do a lot of research. So just comparing,
Mhm.
nations, comparing countries, like, we steadily are falling behind over and
Behind.
over again. And because why? We're doing political battles, we're doing,
Mm,
left versus right, brown versus
mm,
white. Like, it doesn't
mm.
make sense. Like, at the end of the day, we all need to be able to have fundamental education. We all need to
Yeah.
have equal access to the same things. I even go to, I don't understand why education is being, funded based off of the property tax of a house in the area
Mm,
that you live in. Because at
mhm.
the end of the day, are we not all, if you say we're all equal, should not every student receive the same amount of funding per pupil spending, regardless of what area that they are in? And of course, it always comes down to money. As we
Yeah.
see, my last podcast, we were talking about education within the capitalistic society and how it
Mm,
just became another money grab in some essence instead of the main focus of actually educating our children. And it's not every format of education is the same. We're speaking public education, for me at least, but you do see this in other charter institutions and things like that, and people abusing charter schools because it's tied to money. And so I think in a greed-filled nation that we are in,
mm.
and this goes back to how we're founded as a nation. It's for resources, it's for monetary gain, it's for popularity, all those things, right? And so it's just a shame for me and kind of my point of view that we are risking the well-being of students and teachers and people for whatever this battle is way up at the top that trickles down to us, and it should not necessarily be here. um, and so I knew me and you were going to get deep today. So I want to bring us back to some things that you're doing within your work. So you do a lot of, we talked about the book club, and you talked
Mhm,
about your therapy work, but I know you're doing some more
mhm.
workshops and things like that. You have one coming up. So just for those that know some other opportunities that you can assist with, what are some other workshops that you provide to the community or to businesses around these types of areas?
Yeah. So I did a training on navigating microaggressions in workplace settings for the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Um, I have done um, different, engagements, speaking engagements. I have a keynote speaking engagement, my first keynote that's coming up.
Nice.
So I'm super excited with a very
Congrats.
well known organization in the Valley. So stay tuned for that. Like, I'll definitely post on my social medias. I'm on LinkedIn too,
Okay,
Impact
yes.
Action Network Advocacy Consultant Agency. And yeah, my town halls, I've done them on the books. Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, Black Fatigue by Dr. Mary Frances Winters, Sean Black Woman by Marita Golden. So I'm looking at doing more initiatives, partnering with authors, having them actually come out to
Yeah.
host, workshops, writing as a form of healing, and um, different book discussions to promote, their new books. The new
Nice.
Black woman heals herself, practices self care. So I've been working with a lot of these authors to just really align the theme educate to liberate by
Hmm.
showcasing authors of color who are providing that representation for readers and for people of color in our communities through these town halls. So
Nice.
I don't do so much of the town halls and tablings. Now I'm definitely looking to do more professional and career development coaching with
Yes.
resume building, revamping, cover letters, interview preparation, internship preparation. I've had a lot of different experiences that I feel like I could really be that guiding light to get younger people and professionals in the door of where they want to be. So if I
Mm-hmm.
can share that knowledge and experience and work ethic on how to go after your goals and milestones and turn, your dreams and visions into a reality, like that's what it's about, paying
Yeah.
it forward, because that's what my
Yes.
mentors have done to me. So
Yes. So if you guys need any of that, please, I'm telling you, Jeri is the one to definitely connect with. And you've, even in our short time of knowing each other in the last couple of years, you give me so much inspiration. And I think the resources that you leverage are really important, because it's, a lot, kind of, it says a lot on the topics that you include, but you also, like you said, you have people that are speaking on these topics that have experienced this. So for you as a mentor to speak and to help through these different areas that you can support in the community, and all the work that you're doing in all of your different platforms. And so as we kind of close out tonight, I just want to know, any final words, or like anything you want to talk on else before we kind of wrap up, because I know that me and you will get like extra deep today. So I want to do surface level. We'll break out some extra things later.
no, I don't have anything else to say. I think we've covered pretty much everything. I will say this though. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
advocate for HBCUs, being an HBCU graduate, the 92nd and 95th Soldiers of the United States Colored Infantry founded my HBCU in 1866. And because of them, I am. So I just encourage all those in power to utilize your power to effect change in positive ways, and not taking safe spaces, because again, that's social emotional learning, away from communities of people who did not have a place, a safe space to go that supported their social emotional learning. So that
Mm-hmm.
led to the founding of HBCUs. And even more than that, just didn't have the right to get an education. Because
Right.
again, when we talk about just social determinants of health and lack of access and generational cycles, themes
Mm-hmm.
and patterns we've seen in the education system that have impacted those who possess difference. Just these are land grant institutions. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, everybody who's founded a HBCU is like a pioneer in Black history, in American history, because Black history is American history. Our
Mm-hmm.
ancestors built this country. So it's like and are vital to its thriving. So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, leave HBCUs alone. If you're not going to fund them, donate to them, contribute to them, build them up, or create a pipeline for scholars to be educated multiculturally, leave them alone, because
Right.
it's nothing but ignorance and hate, and it's not gonna serve you well. It's not gonna serve the future generations of this country well. So when we
Right.
talk about a viable community, we need to look at viable assets and networks of resources,
Mm-hmm.
and HBCUs are
Yes.
that.
Absolutely. Yes. So thank you. The powerful words as always, Jeri. So I'm going to close this out on that. Everybody watching again, please be sure to connect with Jeri Perkins at Impact Action Network, Instagram, Facebook, not YouTube, LinkedIn, and then her website is all under the same. And then of course, like, follow, and share my platform. And if you have anything to add or comment, please do so in the chat below. And you guys all have a great night. Thank you, Jeri.